When you talk, you are only repeating what already known. But when you listen, you may learn something new. Good morning, student. Welcome back to a fine morning. Hope so. All are healthy and safe. Now we have completed with our unit test. Let's go further and start up now with semester portion. So today we'll be starting up with History Chapter 3, that is India's Internal Challenges. So let's have some introduction on India's internal challenges. The internal factors refer to anything within and under the control of the country, and no matter whether they are tangible or intangible. These factors, after being figured out, are grouped into strength and weaknesses of the country. In this chapter, we are going to learn about some internal challenges that India faces. We shall see some more internal challenges like separatorist movement, issue of Northeast India, Naxalism, communalism and regionalism. In this video, further, we'll be discussing about the unrest in Punjab. In 1973, Akali Dal put forward the Anandpur Sahib resolution to demand more autonomic powers to the state of Punjab. The Congress government considered the resolution a sectionist document and rejected it. In 1983, to escape arrest, he along with his militant cadre occupied and fortified the Sikh shrine Akal Takht. Akali Dal was a major political party in Punjab. In 1973, the Akali Dal passed the Anandpur Sahib resolution. The following demands were made in the resolution. Chandigarh should be made part of Punjab. The Punjabi-speaking parts in other states should be included in the state of Punjab. Recruitment of people from Punjab in the Indian Army should be increased, and more autonomy should be given to the state of Punjab. Akali Dal came to power in Punjab in 1977. While taking charge, they asked for a larger share of river water for Punjab, holy city status for Amritsar, etc., along with their old demand. In 1980, the movement for independent Khalistan took root in Punjab. During that period, the leader of the Akali Dal was Sant Harcharan Singh Longowal. He used to direct the activists from the Golden Temple to the stage protest. On the other side of the Golden Temple, armed followers started gathering around the staunch Khalistan supporter, Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. During that period, terrorist activities had begun. Bhindranwale was arrested in 1981, accused of the murder of newspaper editor Lala Jagat Narayan. After this incident, the situation worsened. Due to this development, President's rule was imposed in Punjab in 1983. Bhindranwale went to stay at a religious place called Akal Takht. Bhindranwale's followers captured the Golden Temple and built a barricade of sand over there. The area looked like a fort. This greatly disturbed peace in Punjab. It was a major challenge to Indian democracy. In this video, we have discussed about the introduction and the unrest in Punjab. In that, we have seen about Akali Dal, Anandpur Sahib resolution, Independent Khalistan and Akal Takht. In the next video, we'll be discussing about the Operation Blue Star. So, children, continue with your eye exercise before starting up with the next video. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you have imagined. Good morning, students. Welcome back to today's next video. So in the last video, we have discussed about the introduction and unrest in Punjab. And in this video, we are going to discuss about the Operation Blue Star. Operation Blue Star was the code name of an Indian military action carried out between 1st June and 6th June 1984 to remove the militant Sikh leader Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale and his followers from the building of the Harmandir Sahib, that is Golden Temple complex in Amritsar, Punjab. Operation Blue Star specifically was aimed to eliminate Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale from the Golden Temple complex and regain the control over Harmandir Sahib. Official reports put forward the number of deaths among the Indian Army and even the number of deaths of civilians through independent estimate ran much higher. The main task of getting the terrorists out of the Golden Temple was entrusted to Major General Kuldip Singh Brar. On the morning of 3rd June 1984, the mission Operation Blue Star started. The operation ended on 6th June. In this military operation, the Indian Army functioned with great restraint. The operation ended with the death of Bhindranwale and other terrorists. In 1986, an operation had to be conducted against terrorists in the Golden Temple once more. It was called Operation Black Thunder. After this action was taken, the process of establishment of peace in Punjab picked up momentum. A military expedition taken up with a particular objective is called an operation. Operation Blue Star was an operation undertaken to evict the terrorists hiding in the Golden Temple. Operation Blue Star was a military operation which occurred between 1st June and 6th June 1984, which was ordered by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to remove militant religious leader Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale and his militant armed followers from Golden Temple. Let's have some more information on Golden Temple. Golden Temple is located in the city of Amritsar, Punjab state, northwestern India. The first Harmandir Sahib was built in 1604 by Arjan, the fifth Sikh Guru, who symbolically had it placed on a lower level so that even the humblest had to step down to enter it. So in this video, children, we have discussed about the Operation Blue Star. In the next video, we'll be discussing about the issues concerning Northeast India. So children, stay home, stay safe. Before starting up with the next video, continue with eye exercise. Education is a work of self-organization by which man adapts himself to the condition of life. Good morning, students. Welcome back to a fine morning. So, we have already started up with History Chapter 3, that is India's Internal Challenges. In the last video, we have discussed about Operation Blue Star, and in this video, we will be discussing about issues concerning Northeast India. Let's have some more information about Northeast India. Northeast Indian states are also known as Seven Sister States or Northeast Paradise, unexplored and known for its natural beauty, diversity, rare and unique wildlife, people and culture. Life is indeed great in northeastern India. Life is simple and we value government assets than most of the country do. Agartala is the capital city of most literate state of the country, Tripura. Northeast India consists of the 8 states of Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim and Tripura. International borders of India touch each of the states of varying extent. These states are different with the respect of ethnicity, language, and cultural diversity. The first Prime Minister of independent India took the lead in bringing the tribes living in these areas into the mainstream of the country. In 1954, he formed the Northeast Frontier Agency, that is NEFA area, comprising of the territories on the Sino-Indian border and the tribal areas towards the north of Assam. Nehru took the position of bringing about the development of hundreds of tribes in these parts while preserving their culture. Special provisions have been made with respect to these areas in 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution. In 1965, the responsibility of administering the area was given to the Ministry of External Affairs. The Northeastern Council Act of 1971 was supposed to advise the central government regarding aspects of common interest in economic and social spheres, interstate transport, electricity, flood control, etc. In the Northeast, let's see some more information. The Northeast is the combination of 8 states comprising Sikkim, Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Tripura. Every state has its own culture, tradition, which make it different from rest of India. These states have really a natural beauty. We have not seen any man-made beauty over here, which attract the tourists to the place. The Northeast states are often known as Seven Sister States because they are independent on one another. All these states are connected to India via Siliguri corridor. Hence, that is the only way to reach the Seven Sister State. So children, in this video, we have discussed about the issues concerning Northeast India. In the next video, we'll be discussing about the Mizoram. Children, continue with your eye exercise before starting up with the next video. Education is the process in which we discover that learning adds quality to our lives. Learning must be experienced. Good morning, student. Welcome to today's next video. In the last video, we have discussed about issues concerning Northeast India. In this video, we will be discussing about Mizoram. Let's discuss about little bit Northeast history. When India became self-governing from the United Kingdom in 1947, only 3 states covered the area. Manipur and Tripura were the princely state, while a much bigger Assam province was under direct British rule. Its capital was Shillong. Today's current, we can call it as Meghalaya. 4 new states were carved out of the original territory of Assam in the decades of following independence, in line with the strategy of Indian government of reorganizing the states along ethnic and linguistic lines. Therefore, Nagaland became a separate state in 1963, followed by Meghalaya in 1972. Mizoram became a union territory in 1972 and achieved statehood along with Arunachal Pradesh in 1987. The tribes in the Northeast India have an ancient history. When India became independent, the government gave administrative autonomy to the district of Mizo majority areas of the Lushai Hills. When the State Reorganization Commission was appointed in 1954, the expectations of the people in the area grew. Mizo leaders started demanding an autonomous Mizo province. In 1959, the territory of Mizoram experienced severe drought. During this famine, Mizo leader Lal Denga served the common people a lot. In 1961, Lal Denga established an organization called Mizo National Front, that is MNF. He asked for Greater Mizoram, an independent nation carved out of Tripura, Manipur, and Mizo majority area from Lushai Hills. In March 1966, Mizo National Front announced the emergence of independent Mizoram. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi handled the situation firmly and suppressed the rebellion. When the situation calmed down in 1972, the Mizo majority area was given the status of Union Territory. In 1985, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi had an agreement with Mizo National Front and Mizoram was given the status of a full-fledged state. Lal Denga became the Chief Minister of the state. Mizoram state of India is located in the northeastern part of the country and it is bounded by Myanmar to the east and south, Bangladesh to the west, and by the state of Tripura to the northwest, Assam to the north, and Manipur to the northeast. The capital is Aizawl in the north-central part of the state. Mizoram was known as the Lushai Hills district of Assam before it was renamed as Mizo Hills district in 1954. In 1972, it became a centrally administered union territory under the name of Mizoram, and in 1987 it achieved its statehood. So in this video we have discussed about Mizoram. In the next video, children will be discussing about Nagaland. Continue with your eye exercise before starting up with the next video. Education is not only a ladder of opportunity, but also an investment in our future. Good morning, student. Welcome to a fine morning. We have already started up with History Chapter 3, that is India's Internal Challenges. In the last video, we have already discussed about Mizoram. In this video, we'll be dealing with Nagaland state. The ancient name of Nagaland is Nakanchi or Naganchi, derived from the Naga language. Before the arrival of European colonialism in South Asia, there had been many wars and raids from Burma on Naga tribes. Nagaland became the 16th state of India on 1st December 1963. Before that, it was a part of state of Assam. One of the oldest among the 11 districts of state, Kohima is the first seat of modern administration as the headquarters of Naga Hill district when Nagaland became a full-fledged state. Based on 2011 census data, Nagaland effectively has 14 languages and 17 dialects, with the largest languages having only a 46% of share. The Naga tribe in the northeast India is known as Martial tribe. The Naga tribe had settled in eastern Himalayas, Naga Hills, border areas of Assam and Myanmar. In 1946, some educated Naga youth established an organization called Naga National Council, that is NNC. Later, they made a demand for an independent state of Nagaland. They were led by Angamiza Fufizo. In 1954, the Naga National Council announced the establishment of an independent federation of Nagaland. In 1955, skirmishes happened between local Nagas and the soldiers of Assam Rifles. Military action was taken to suppress the skirmishes. Several rounds of discussion took place between the central government and the Naga National Council. Central government decided to give the Naga majority territory the status of Union Territory. Nagaland was made a full-fledged state on 1st December 1963 by putting towards the Naga majority territory and a part of Twinsang. Nagaland state of India, lying in the hills and mountains of the northeastern part of the country. It is one of the smallest states of India. Nagaland is bounded by the Indian states of Arunachal Pradesh to the northeast, Manipur to the south, and Assam to the west and northwest, and the country of Myanmar to the east. The state capital is Kohima, located in the southern part of Nagaland. Nagaland has a monsoonal climate. Humidity levels are generally high throughout the state. Nagaland is a rural state. More than 4/5 of the population lives in small isolated villages. Nagaland depends mostly on roads for transportation. A national highway runs from Dimapur to Kohima and then on Impal in Manipur. So children, in this video we have discussed about Nagaland. In the next video, we'll be discussing about Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. Continue with your eye exercise. Education is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to open children's heart and minds to the unbelievable wonder of the universe. Good morning, student. Welcome to today's next video. In the last video, we have discussed about Nagaland. In this video, we'll be discussing about Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. Assam. Assam is a state in northeastern India situated south of the East Himalayas along the Brahmaputra and Barak River Valley. Assam is specially known for its Assam tea and Assam silk. Assam is also famous for one-horned rhinos, Kamakhya temple, etc. Assam was the first state in India to have oil reservoirs. Arunachal Pradesh. State of India, formerly known as East Frontier Agency from the British colonial era. The area was a part of Assam until it was made the Indian Territory of Arunachal Pradesh in 1972, and in 1987 it became an Indian state. Itanagar is the capital of Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is the largest of 7 sister states of northeast India by area. Among the crops grown here are maize, rice, millet, wheat, pulses, sugarcane, etc. Arunachal Pradesh is also ideal for horticulture and fruit orchards. In 1983, there was an intense agitation staged by All Assam Student Union and Assam Ganasangram Parishad over the question of the dominance in Assam of Bengali migrants. In 1985, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, Central Home Minister Shankar Rao Chauhan and Assami leader Prafulla Kumar Mohanto signed an accord. It was decided to send the Bangladeshi citizens who had infiltrated in Assam back to their original places. In 1986, elections were held for Assam Legislative Assembly and Prafulla Kumar Mohanto of Assam Gana Parishad became the new chief minister. Due to this democratic process, it became possible to establish peace in Assam. Arunachal Pradesh. In 1954, NEFA was created. In 1972, it began to be called Arunachal Pradesh, Region of Rising Sun. On 20th February 1987, it got the status of constituent state. During the period from 1960 to 2000, Northeast India has progressed towards a more mature democracy. This area is on the path of the progress through industrialization, spread of education, etc. So children, in this video we have discussed about Assam, Arunachal Pradesh. In the next video, we'll be discussing about Naxalism. Children, continue with your eye exercise before starting the next video. Take care. Have a good day. Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Good morning, student. Welcome back to today's next video. So, we have already discussed about Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. In this video, we'll be discussing about Naxalism. The term Naxalism derives its name from the village Naxalbari of West Bengal. It is originated as rebellion against local landlord who based a peasant over land disputes. This rebellion was under the leadership of Kannu Santhal and Jagan Sanyal, with an objective of rightful redistribution of land to working peasants, which was initiated in 1967. There were many factors responsible for the growth of Naxalism. Some of were mismanagement of forest, tribal policies not implemented well, absence of proper industrialization, and lack of land reforms, geographical terrain, and middle class youth. This movement started at Naxalbari in Darjeeling district in West Bengal. The Naxalite organized the small land-holding farmers and land laborers and took charge of their lands, put up red flags and declared that area as free territory in 1967. All those movements that took inspiration from this rebellion are called as Naxalite movement. This movement had the objective of establishing action committees to raise voice against the exploitation of the farmers by the landlords and confiscate the land of the landlords and distribute it among the tenants. Later, the movement strayed away from its objective. It took recourse to terrorism to prevent any government schemes and welfare policies from reaching the common people. The Naxalites started a parallel system by rejecting the democratic system. This made Naxalism a serious challenge to India's internal security. The movement was mainly located in West Bengal. Later, the movement spread to East Godavari in Andhra Pradesh, parts of Vishakhapatnam, Karimnagar in Telangana, Adilabad, Bastar, and Sukma in Chhattisgarh, Gadchiroli, Bhandardara, and parts of Chandrapur in Maharashtra, Balaghat and Mandala in Madhya Pradesh, and Koraput in Odisha. In order to maintain their influence, the Naxalites established an organization called People's Liberation Guerrilla Army, that is PLGA. This conflict is still going on. So children, in this video, we have discussed about Naxalism. In the next video, we'll be dealing with communalism. So continue with your eye exercise. Till then, stay safe, stay home. Think big thoughts, but relish some pleasure. Good morning, student. Welcome back to a very fine morning. So, we have already started up with History Chapter 3, that is, India's Internal Challenges. So, in the last video, we have discussed about Naxalism. In this video, we'll be discussing about communalism. Let's have some more information on communalism. Communalism usually refers to a system that integrates communal ownership and federations of highly localized independent communities. In particular, earlier communities and movements advocating such practices were often described as an anarchist, socialist, or communist. Communalism is a serious threat to the unity of our country. Communalism emerges out of narrow religious pride. The British sowed the seeds of communalism in our country. People of different religions have happily lived together since many centuries. There is nothing wrong in people of different religions living together in a country while being duly proud of their own religion. But when this pride becomes excessive, then it turns into bigotry. Each one of them begin to consider their religion superior and other inferior. This leads to religious fanatism. Fanatism is the base of communalism. It makes one oblivious of national interest. People of different religion don't trust each other. They become suspicious of each other. Compatriots following different religions are looked at as enemies. Even commensality or coming together on festival becomes rare. As a result, it becomes difficult for everybody to come together and get organized for their demands and rights as citizens. Fanatism makes the perspective of looking at events and people's prejudice. Some people begin to think economic and social questions also in the framework of their own religions. Some people of all religions think that since they belong to a particular religion, they have no influence in politics. They begin to believe that they are being treated unjustly. They hold the idea that government is partial against their religion. In such condition, they become too sensitive about their religion and their co-religionists. If anybody speaks about the religion of the people of the religion or insult the religion symbols knowingly or unknowingly, riot breaks out. Because of this kind of thinking, hundreds of innocent people are killed. Public property worth crores of rupees is damaged. Public peace is destroyed. Due to bitter memories of the riots, people are estranged from each other and mutual trust receives a setback. Trust between people is the basis of coexistence. If trust breaks, social unity receives a blow. How can national unity be achieved without social unity? Hence, it is necessary that we all counter this religious communalism with all our strength. For this, we should mix with people of different religions. We should accept the good practices and ideas of each other. We should be able to look at and understand our economic and social problems rationally. We should not mix these questions with religions. We should search for economic, political, or historical research that are responsible for disturbing religious harmony. This is the only way to put end to communalism and strengthen national unity. So in this video, we have discussed about communalism. In the next video, we'll be discussing about regionalism. Children, continue with your eye exercise. A positive attitude can really make dreams come true. Good morning, student. Welcome to today's next video. Today, we are towards the end of history, chapter 3, that is India's internal challenges. We have seen in the last video about communalism. In this video, we'll be dealing with regionalism. Let's have some more information on regionalism. Regionalism is a political ideology focusing on the development of a political or social system based on one or more regions or the nations, normative or economic interest of a specific region or another subnational entity gaining the strength from or aiming to the strengthen. Regionalism is important to you because it has been proven to make governments more efficient and effective. More efficient and effective governments help keep taxes and fees lower while providing you and your family with a higher quality of life. Regionalism means having excessive pride about one's region. It is one thing to introduce oneself as a Bengali or a Marathi person. But if I think that people I am Bengali or a Marathi, I am a superior to other from other provinces, it can be termed as excessive regional pride. The love of one's provision turns morbid. Due to this kind of an excessive regional pride, it is natural to feel love for one's province. It is, but it should not become abnormal. Regionalism thrives on regional imbalance in development. In post-independence period, some states achieved more progress while some states remained backward. For example, states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab, Tamil Nadu developed economically and industrially, whereas states like Odisha, Bihar, Assam remained underdeveloped economically and industrially. Economic development and reforms are the foundation of the progress. As a result, the state that develop economically can also achieve progress in other areas like education, health, and culture. The states which have not developed in this manner remain backward in education and civics amenities. The opportunities of development available to people in developed state are not possible for people in backward state. They are harassed by problems of education, backwardness, unemployment, poverty, etc. They begin to think that they are being cheated, they are being kept away from the benefits of the development. Because of this, the understanding between states is broken. This in turn has a negative impact on national unity. The economic imbalance that has endangered this understanding need to be set right. Our government makes effort in that direction. Regionalism can affect developed as well as undeveloped state. The people of developed state begin to believe that they are superior due to their superior history and culture, and hence they have developed that much. They begin to look down upon the people of underdeveloped regions. They are not willing to share the benefits of developed with the backward state. On the other hand, the people from backward areas need to arouse their regional identity to organize themselves from this. Then they try to unnecessarily glorify local traditions and culture to prove their uniqueness. This leads to regionalism. It endangers national unity. The evil of regionalism can be tackled by reducing the imbalance in development. We have studied a few challenges that India is facing. Apart this, there are several problems like overpopulation, cleanliness, agriculture, and problem of farmers, poverty, housing, and food. We are trying to overcome this and move forward. We are progressing steadily. In the next chapter, we shall learn about the progress in the economic field. So in this chapter, children, we have discussed about the different issues, internal challenges. In the next chapter, we'll be dealing with progress in the economic field.